Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Thank you very much. Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 3, text number 7. So, as against a pretentious person, a pretender, Krishna now speaks of a person whose senses are fully engaged according to one's propensities. That makes for true control of the senses as against being a pretender. And this makes for a sincere person. Okay? Fully engaged senses makes for true control of the senses. And that safeguards one against being a pretender. Yasta indriyani manasa niyam ya arabhate arjuna karmendriyai karma yogam asakta savishishyate. This is not a key word, but it's an interesting word, asakta. So one should Indriyani Manasa. The interesting thing is Indriyani Manasa. It's not just the external use of your senses, but Indriyani Manasa. Using your senses with the mind. In other words, the mind is not elsewhere. You know, sometimes people say, I'm chanting japa, but my mind wanders. This verse is saying, no, you chant with your mind not wandering. In other words, there's a problem straight away when you say mind wanders. You are not doing it properly. The only way to actually control the senses, regulate the senses, niyamya, is with the mind. That's the process. So to say my mind wanders is actually admitting that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing the way I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not doing it that way. I'm doing it in the wrong way. I'm just externally doing something, letting my mind wander. The process requires that you use your senses with your mind absorbed in that engagement. Okay, so then Krishna says asakta, without attachment. So sakta has interesting meanings. Sakta obviously means attached, but it also means to cling to. When you cling on to something, when you adhere, you know, like glue, it's stuck. When you belong to something, when you're committed to something, when you're addicted to something, when you're devoted to something, it's called sakta. Very interesting. In other words, it is not something that happens to you. I think an example was given again by H.G.Harirama Prabhu. You cling onto the tree and you say, let go, let go. You are clinging, you are holding it. Okay? So sakta means that. So Krishna is saying asakta, without clinging to anything material. Vishishyate. So Vishishyate, Prabhupada writes, is by far the better. It also means it is more distinguished, it's more excellent, and also better than. That's Vishishyate. Better, more, the preferred option, Vishishyate. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. So within this verse, a number of conditions are mentioned of what will constitute the right sort of conduct. Because the previous verse was the pretender, wrong sort of conduct. You are externally making a show of being a yogi, but with your mind you're meditating on the objects of the senses. So the right sort of conduct is that, by the way, the word sincere is not in the translation, but that's what it means, because the other person was insincere. He was pretentious, he was a cheater. So by extension, this person is a sincere person. On the other hand, a sincere person, he will, number one, control the active senses. Number 1A, with the mind, by the mind. In other words, he doesn't do acting. Actors, they're very good at acting. Now, everyone is an actor. In Kali Yuga, everyone, because it's the age of hypocrisy. Hypocrisy means your mind is somewhere else, but your body is looking like a yogi. So you don't want. So with the mind there, begin karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment. He is by far superior. So 4 kinds of conditions are there to control the senses with the mind. Begin karma yoga. Aravate karma indriye karma yoga. Without attachment. Asakta. Okay. The other thing is that the person who's a pretender, see, it's a wonderful contrast. Pretender, sincere person, pretender, sincere. You can examine something because there is a distinction. It's not a grey area. It's very clear. The difference is very clear. Because normally, without consulting Bhagavad Gita, without consulting Krishna's statement, people say, well, who is to know whether somebody is sincere? That's the kind of general idea, that we are reluctant to judge because, of course, there's the other very big taboo. You are an offender, Prabhu. Offender is like the biggest, catch-all crime of the century. But you must not make the mistake of confounding knowledge with statements like offenses, which you don't fully understand. Things should be understood. There's no offense in knowledge. There's no offense to anybody, to the holy name, to the holy Dham, to a Vaishnava. No offense in knowledge. Offenses is something else, which we'll explain later on, not today. So they exist, but here we're talking about knowledge. Knowledge requires, there's a pretender, there's a sincere person. So the sincere person, he applies himself to these duties wholeheartedly. Manasa, that's the whole point. With the mind, by the mind, indriyani manasa niyamya. Not just indriyani niyamya, manasa, by the mind. That means wholeheartedly. And the word karma yoga means with the aim to become yoga. By this process, to link oneself with Krishna. By this application, this technique of using your senses with your mind, connect with Krishna. This process. Arabate, begin this path, okay? And asakta, don't cling on to anything else. Let go of everything else. That's the requirement for this formula. This formula requires all these things. You know, when you're cooking, you need sugar, you need flour, you need water, you can't have one ingredient missing, otherwise you don't come up with the right result. So this is what this cake requires. This cake of Krishna consciousness requires these elements. So fully engaged senses though, okay, niyamya, but under control. Srila Prabhupada writes, instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment. Is there anybody who doesn't know the meaning of the word wanton? W-A-N-T-O-N. Good. So next time if you don't know, you ask straight away. You know. Wanton means indiscriminate, whimsical. So without observing any rules or regulations. Instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, mithya achari, it is far better, that word vishishyate, it is far better to remain in one's own business. So here, if you remember, the word earlier was used swadharma, karma, so be in your, and execute the purpose of life, which is yoga, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The prime swarthagati, or goal of self-interest, is to reach Vishnu. So that's yoga. Now here Prabhupada says something very nice. The whole institution of Varna and Ashram is designed for this purpose. There was a question, right? I think that Varna Ashram, then Krishna says, surrender to me. But here Prabhupada reconciles. The whole purpose of this institution of Varna Ashram is to surrender to Krishna, is karma yoga, for yoga, to reach Vishnu. Okay? A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self-realization, one can live a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and in that way make progress. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts showboating spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. So Prabhupada ends by this famous statement. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. So, The purpose of meditating, yoga, is not to make a living. Is not to make a living. Now people want to make a living. But then don't be a false person. Because yoga is not for making a living. This path of renunciation, of sannyas, is not for a living. You should not do it. If you remember yesterday, we mentioned that you forfeit a lot if you just live a life of making a living out of yoga. You're cheating yourself. You're depriving yourself of a very great benefit for something very cheap. Because after all, a little comfort is temporary. You may be given a nice chauffeur, car, AC facility. But really think about it. It's not all that big a deal. It's limited by how many days will you enjoy it. And there's a funny thing about enjoyment in material life. Let's say you have a car and you have a chauffeur and you have a AC. But if everybody else has better AC than you, everybody has not just a car, but they have a Mercedes, you will feel miserable. Why are you not happy? You still have a chauffeur, you still have a car, but you feel miserable. Because so-called enjoyment is just envy. I have it, nobody else has. Then you feel good. But if everybody has, only you don't. You have the car that goes putta putta put, dies. But if nobody else has, you feel like the king. So it's a very deceptive distraction. Very deceptive. And the only person who's cheated is the poor fellow who does this, who undertakes to be a cheater. Now Srila Prabhupada in the next verse, he is going to discuss in the purport more about the mithyachari, the pretender. Okay. Now just remember, it's a bit like that section in the second chapter that you're not the body. The body is temporary, you're the soul, you're eternal. So now Krishna is going to explain this point more. Niyatam kuru karma tvam, karma jayo hi akarmana, sharira yatra pichate, na prasiddhyat akarmana. So here Krishna is describing this idea of, see, when we first hear this phrase that Indriyani manasa niyamya arabhate, karma indriya. When we hear that regulate your senses by the mind, we think, well, it could be anything. I'm regulated. I'm only eating 6 samosas every day. I'm regulated. I'm not. It's never 5. No, it's not regulation that you make up on your own. So here Krishna explains what he means by regulation. Niyatam kuru karmatam. He says, perform your prescribed duty. Karmatvam. We each have some karma. Something we're supposed to do. Perform your prescribed duty. For doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Sharira yatra api. Sharira, the body. So even though you're not the body, second chapter. See, here's the thing. Because you're not the body doesn't mean you neglect the body. Krishna is saying, you have to maintain your body. He's going to explain that we do this helplessly anyway, coming up. So this is the key here. That don't act whimsically. Don't get funny ideas in your head. Life is meant for responsible living, which means performing your prescribed duty. You have something to do. When you wake up, you already have something to do. Prescribed duties account for all hours of your day and night. All hours. They don't account for 2 hours, 25 minutes. No. They account for every second of every day until you die. Until you die. From birth till death. So that way you're safe. You see, you're safe. Because if you don't have something to do, idle mind is a devil's workshop. I see the blank stares. That means you didn't know. You didn't know. Idle mind is a devil's workshop. It's a very common statement in the West. I think it may have origins in Christian tradition, but idle mind is a devil's workshop. So, which is also what Krishna did say about the mind earlier, and he's going to say more about the mind later on. So, niyata karma means niyata. Yata means control, niyata, which has been restricted. That means you can do this, but you cannot do that. It's restricted. There's a boundary set. So that means if one is going to do his karma, his prescribed duty, he has to know his boundaries. What is allowed, what is not allowed. It's interesting, the word niyata has a number of meanings. Prescribed is the correct one, but it also means to restrain, restrict, to control, to discipline, to concentrate, to establish. So niyata, Kuru, do it, do your niyata karma. Tvam, Krishna is saying. Because such work, jaya, is better than neglecting, than not doing this. Because when you don't do your prescribed duty, you will, even your body is not. So that means our prescribed duties, they're very comprehensive. Hands up if you don't understand, not just the meaning of the word, but the meaning of the phrase, comprehensive. If you don't understand, okay. So, comprehensive. In other words, they don't leave something out. You know, for example, let's suppose you go on a vacation, right? And no, actually that's a very good topic. What about vacation? Is that a prescribed duty? Yeah, hands up. Is it a prescribed duty? Hands up if you think it is not. Very good. But you see, many people go on vacation. Now, vacation, let's suppose your whole life is a vacation. How will you maintain your body? Vacation doesn't maintain your body. It's a concocted idea. It is not Vedic idea. It's actually, if you must know the truth, it wasn't even a Western idea. It's a modern idea. It's a modern disease. In the West, even not, I would guess, not even 100 years ago, 99% of the people never went on vacation, never aspired to. They were busy in their duties from birth till death. But You know, we live in a world of marketing. So the things that we don't need, we are given. And vacation, holiday is one of them. See, that's another interesting thing. There were days when you were supposed to celebrate religious days. So they were called holy days, holy, H-O-L-Y. They became holidays, H-O-L-I. You know, just to, so every culture in the world recognized religious days, but not waste of time days, vacation. And it's interesting, in the West, every day was a working day, except Sunday for worship. For worship, only for worship. Exception. Otherwise, every day was a working day. So, just something to, Krishna is pointing out that really your prescribed duties, your 24 hours, your 7 days a week, they are very comprehensive. They will take care of the needs of your body, but also yoga, your connection with Lord Vishnu, the purpose of this life. So, Krishna is saying, neglecting your prescribed duties does not even maintain your body. Yatra is a very interesting word, yatra. Maintenance, okay? So yatra means two things, livelihood as well as a journey. You know, we have Rath Yatra, journey, but also yatra. So just a little ISKCON history. Many preaching areas in ISKCON in the early days, obviously we have temples now, but we didn't have temples then. Devotees would go to a country where there was no temple. So they were called Belgium Yatra, Scottish Yatra, meaning they were engaged in that activity in that area. I don't know if you know, but these were the words used, yatra. Okay? So where devotees were engaged in preaching Krishna consciousness. So you would call that area, that land, followed by the word yatra. The French yatra. Okay. When there was no temple, so Krishna is saying, Sharira Yatra, the journey of your body, the needs of your body, even api, can't be met by not doing your prescribed duty. And Sharira Yatra Pichana Chate Na Prasidyat Akarma. Okay. Srila Prabhupada writes, there are many pseudo-meditators who misrepresent themselves as belonging to high parentage and great professional men, who falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for the sake of advancement in spiritual life. In other words, pseudo-meditators they try to impress others by false credentials. In other words, a real meditator doesn't have to say, first of all, I have these certificates. You know, Srila Prabhupada just recently, he said, it's a self-manifest condition. You remember this? I think it was last week. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifest condition. It doesn't require you to prove with other things. You know, the fact that you're wearing a silk dhoti and not an ordinary one, the fact that you're in a higher seat and not like all the other low fellows, some kind of external things. It's a self-manifest condition. So pseudo-meditator will misrepresent condition, self-manifest condition. Okay, so they make a false kind of, propagate a false idea that they are more elevated and more advanced than they actually are. So naturally, this is true, but it can happen to us. I don't want to elaborate, but we should be careful of this pitfall that, I don't want to spell it out because I'll just get in trouble. Okay, Lord Krishna did not want Arjuna to be such a pretender. He did not want him to become. Prabhupada writes that. See, because you might be asking, actually Krishna says that, Tvam, he says in the verse, Tvam te, you Arjuna, don't become this. Don't do this. You at least do this. Krishna is asking Arjuna, he's asking us, you've come to me, you've come to my shelter, you've come to Krishna consciousness, you've come to ISKCON, now don't be a pretender. Rather, the Lord desired that Arjuna perform his prescribed duties as set forth for Kshatriyas, Kuru Karma Tvam. Arjuna was a householder and a military general, and therefore it was better for him to remain as such and perform his religious duties as prescribed for the householder Kshatriya. Now I'm going to touch upon one issue. Many people, be they 20 years old, 40 years old, or even 60, they've never figured out I don't know what is my prescribed duty. Now, hands up if you have been through it or you know people who have been through it. They don't know. So here's an elderly Narada Kunda Prabhu saying also doesn't know. So interesting, isn't it? Interesting. This, come on this side. Boys on this side, ladies on this side. Thank you. So, this is very vital. You have to know your prescribed duty, otherwise how are you going to engage in it? Arjuna luckily knew. He had doubts, he had some confusion, but he wasn't in doubt what varna he was and what ashram. You understand? So we have a bigger problem. We don't know what varna we are, and many people still don't know what ashram they belong to. Sometimes saffron, sometimes white, next day, anyway. So, lot more confusion. So, you see the necessity to resolve that. Actually, the word varna sankara doesn't just mean unwanted, it means confused. The word sankara means a person who doesn't know what varna he belongs to is called varna sankara. Okay. Completely confused, not even confused. Now because he doesn't know what varna, what activity will he perform? He doesn't know. So either in your questions or your own homework, you figure out if you don't know your varna. But, as they say, God help you. Okay. Such activities, varnashram duties, gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free him from material contamination. This is the magic. This is the magic of this prescribed duty. That's what it does. This is a wonderful thing. This is not something to be laughed at and mocked. A person, just by doing his prescribed duty, karma yoga, for the sake of Lord Vishnu, he does cleanse his heart. He does become free from material bondage. Okay. So, whereas now, Prabhupada, so-called renunciation for the purpose of maintenance is never approved by the Lord, nor by any religious scripture. After all, one has to maintain one's body and soul together by some work. Work should not be given up capriciously without purification of materialistic propensities. Now, remember yesterday I said you need three things: purification, training, and engagement. So here is Prabhupada's. I had just, summarized it. But all the elements are mentioned. Purification of materialistic propensities. So the beauty, the benefit of prescribed duties is that you become purified of something that is not easy to become purified. Purification, you try to do it without karma yoga, without engaging your senses with your mind for the sake of Krishna. You try to become purified. It's not easy. Can't be done. Simply can't be done. It's the only way you have to do it. Anyone who is, meaning, see when Prabhupada writes anyone who is, and this is an English statement, it means everyone in the material world is certainly possessed of the impure propensity for sense gratification. Everyone in the material world is certainly possessed. So Srila Prabhupada could not be more emphatic. You say, yes, everyone except. No, certainly means no exception. You also, me also, we're in this. Is possessed of this impure propensity. For what? For sense gratification. So such polluted propensities have to be cleared. They have to. This is our problem. This is our disease. If you're sick, you have to remove your disease. Without doing so, through prescribed duties, one should never attempt to become a so-called transcendentalist, renouncing work and living at the cost of others. So, you see, this is what happens, isn't it? A person becomes a yogi, but when he wants a laptop, he goes to a donor. Say, Prabhu, preaching, Okay, laptop. No, the big one, the good one. Oh, okay. So like that. So what is happening? You're living at the cost of another. But of course, what you say is yukta vairagya. Don't do it. Don't. It's not worth it. Yukta vairagya is something totally else. Yukta vairagya is when you're a Goswami, you get money, you build a temple for Madan Mohan, and you still live under a tree. That's yukta vairagya. Not sit down. You're all students. I don't want to mislead you. Don't do yukta vairagya. Don't misuse it. So this is the relevance here of prescribed duties. It gives us purification. And you can detect when you fall into the mithyachari category if you start living at the cost of others. If you start cultivating donors, cultivate. That means every time he gives you a donation, you send him some prasad. Don't do it. Not good. I won't explain more. If you feel uncomfortable, you can challenge me in the questions. So, but Krishna is very clear. He's saying you should maintain yourself through your prescribed duties. Otherwise, he says you're a mithyachari. Krishna says, and Prabhupada says. But of course, I have to say something different, don't I? That's our disease. We overlook what Krishna says, what Prabhupada says. I'll finish with this point. Some people use Srila Prabhupada as an example. He rode in nice cars. So I will address it. I know there's the usual explanation that he took the offering on behalf of Krishna, not right. And then the problem is everyone thinks, well, I'm doing that too. Laptop, Mercedes, I'm Krishna. I'm detached. Actually, there is a clear difference. Difference is like this. Prabhupada actually, for him, it was an austerity to take those things. He never wanted them. He never aspired for them. He never glorified them. He never thought of them as very big and very important. But because the person who made the offering attached a lot of significance to it, he accepted it. But also, he would do that for even humble things, even humble offerings. He would do it. He wouldn't. He had the same attitude towards a big car coming to him and somebody offering him a little flower. He would accept that too. He wasn't dismissive. His attitude was constant, regardless of the material value of the thing. Secondly, he was not mesmerized by worldly things at all. One of the things that always surprised me was, and I can say this firsthand, not from somebody hearsay, when a person from India goes to the West, he becomes awed by the magnificence of everything, the buildings, the roads, the cars, the clothes. And whereas Srila Prabhupada, he said, well, what is your skyscraper? He was not mesmerized ever by anything. But everyone else who went from India was. You have to understand, everyone was. I say this from first-hand experience. There was nobody who wasn't. They all were. So he didn't have this. So therefore for him actually was an austerity. He preferred, even when after having gone to the West, when he came to India, he went and lived in his very humble Ral Damodar quarters. They are very humble. Even if you live in very simple surroundings, it'll be hard to find you to live in those. And he was the world acharya then. And anyone who had just one follower, he would never settle for anything less than a big hotel. Srila Prabhupada wasn't like that. So you have to understand, these things normally make you fall down. He was not affected because of his very elevated standing. Are you really that free from? We have to ask ourselves. If you're not, you should be veering on the side of caution rather than risking. You don't want to test. You don't want to test yourself and fall down. You should be very reluctant. And that's my little statement on that. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?